So today we're going to continue our 2023 Best Food Plot Planting series. Today we're going to talk about greens and grains. Cereal grains and the big broadleaf annual greens that we use in our food plots. And there's a lot of stuff here. We just about ran out of the blackboard space, but there's a lot to talk about. And it's a very important part of any food plot. I think one of the grains that should be in every food plot, no matter where you are in this country, is cereal rye, just not only for the early season fall benefit, but the winter carryover, as well as it returns in the spring. The soil building capabilities of rye. I think rye should somehow be in every single food plot planting there is for the whitetails. But grains, when we talk about grains, we're talking about those tall annual grasses. We're not discussing ryegrass. We're not talking about perennial ryegrass, annual ryegrass. That belongs in your lawn. It does not belong in a food plot. Okay, rye, cereal rye, rye grain, farmer's rye, annual rye. It's got a lot of different names. We call it just cereal rye here. Oats, of course, another great food plot attraction in addition to any food plot program. Wheat, we use wheat in one of our products called Fall Forage, and that's the only time we use wheat. I do not sell wheat as a standalone product. I just think there's better options out there. I mean, there's a lot of wheat farmers throughout the country, and a lot of hunters hunt over big wheat fields. But if you have your choice to put in something for the deer, I would rather see a combination of rye and oats with a little bit of wheat than just standalone wheat. Triticale is a hybrid of rye and wheat. We don't use it. I don't sell it. And the same thing with barley. I don't use barley. I don't sell barley. We've tried them. Yes, they'll attract whitetails. I just didn't see the attraction as well as the benefits to both the soil and the spring carryover that we are desperately seeking in the northern half of the country. So I'm not saying we won't use or sell triticale or barley in the future, but right now we're just going to concentrate on these three because I found this seems to be the best bang for your buck when it comes to cereal grains is rye and oats. So let's talk about the greens part. What are they? Sometimes we refer to them as candy crops. One of my mentors, Paul Knox, used to call these the sprinkles on the ice cream. The greens or the candy crops would be the sprinkles, and your grains, your rye and your oats would be the ice cream. Kind of a great analogy. But what it is, it's more diversity, it's more attraction for these food plots. And our favorites here, and we use them in a lot of our blends, are peas, soybeans, and of course radishes. We did talk about radishes in Nebraska, but radishes are also a big part of our greens planting and the grains planting. Now beans, we're not talking about growing beans for production. Okay, anybody that hunts in an ag area, actually anyone that's tried July or August planted soybeans understands the drawing power or the attraction of soybeans. And we do like a July planted soybean or an August planted soybean with our green forage blend in ag areas. It just seems to be there's so much food that these soybeans will help pull deer away from the big ag fields. Now our one that we use the most, it's in a lot of our mixes, are peas. We've got either a forage pea. We also sell as a standalone product a winter pea. Now in our blends we use forage peas just because the price point, but the fact that most of them aren't even going to see winter. They're going to be one of the first things that are gone are the peas. It's early season attraction. It's green. It's diversity in these blends. The other thing we like, and we talked about this last week in the Nebraska video, is radishes. We like adding radishes to our cereal grain plantings because there's more diversity. It does help with the soil, but again, we're worried in the fall about feeding our deer, creating attraction, than building soil. We're worrying about building soil in the spring and the summer. But we do like radishes at maybe 3 or 4 pounds an acre with our cereal plantings. Again, it's great diversity, great attraction, and it just offers more food for the whitetails. So to me, in most places that I've seen hunted, worked on, just talking with customers, I think one of the best September, October plantings attraction is oats and radishes. And I think if you have some peas and beans in there, obviously we want some different cereal grains. But these radishes, oats, and some peas are one of the best early season food plots. And we've got that in our mixes, and that's why we do add radishes. So again, like I said last week, you don't want to get carried away with the radish population. You don't want a food plot full of rotting radishes because you had too many in there, but they are a phenomenal draw in the early season. That's why we like adding them to our greens and grains planting. Now, a few of them that we have tried and they have their place, but I just don't have them in a lot of our mixes. Buckwheat's one of them. Now, we all know about the buckwheat roll down method and the soil building capabilities of buckwheat. Buckwheat is a great planting. It grows just about anywhere. But one of the things I like about it is if you've got crappy soil and you're trying to create some diversity, fall planted buckwheat with your cereal grains is another great attraction. Now, we drilled some buckwheat a couple of weeks ago. It's 6 inches high and they're just annihilating right now. And it's, as long as it's not 4 or 5 feet tall and starting to seed out, the deer will likely use buckwheat as a food source, especially if you're in those big woods areas, you've got crappy soil, you're not in an ag area. If you plant it with your cereal grains in August, it's a great addition to any food plot. Sun hemp, we've messed with that on and off, and I think up here, we do have some growing right now. It's a slow grower up here just because of our climate. I think the sun hemp that we got here was from Thailand. So, I don't know what their climate is down there, but I'm sure it's a lot different than here in Michigan. But anyway, I think the folks in the southern half of the country, this would be a good fall planting just because your growing season's so much longer, and that's just sun hemp needs a long growing season. It's a legume. It can be planted a lot earlier, say, Kentucky, Georgia, Carolinas, all through there. It might be something, we've got a soil building south blend that's got sun hemp in it, and they probably can utilize it down there. And it's not only in there for production of nitrogen, but it's also great summer deer food. And I'm just not seeing it up here in Michigan. I'm just not seeing the food production. It'll grow, don't get me wrong, it's growing. But we have so many other options that'll fill that need better than sun hemp. But sun hemp does have its place, but it might be in the southern half of the country. Sunflowers, big leafy plants, okay? And again, they'll work as a green candy crop, but I just think here in the upper part of the country, there's better options. They grow, the deer eat them, but I just don't think we've got the growing season for them if you add them to a fall food plot. I mean, we'll spill some on the floor and we'll throw them out in one of our food plots, and it'll work. They'll eat them, but there might be better options such as peas. If you're going out and actually buying some seed, location of country in the country where you're at might dictate if any of these work for you. But I do like buckwheat. When you've got crappy soil, sandy soil, I refer to crappy soil, clay, sand, low pH, low organic matter. Buckwheat works as a great candy crop. Okay, so let's talk about our grains mixes here at Northwoods. I mean, obviously, we sell rye by itself, 50-pound bags of rye. We sell 50-pound bags of winter peas. We sell 50-pound bags of buckwheat. We sell 50-pound bags of our forage oats. And the thing about the peas that we sell are winter peas, a very cold tolerant pea that people can buy and add to their food plots. Or there's some folks that like a standalone pea planting. Now, the peas in our fall forage and our green forage blend, those are a forage pea. And the reason we don't add winter peas to them, one is for cost, to keep the cost down. And two, a lot of the times the peas are some of the first things to be eaten, so you might not need that frost tolerance because those peas and those blends might not even see the frost. So the fall forage is one of the original blends here at Northwoods. It contains rye, oats, wheat, and forage peas in a ratio that seems to work extremely well. And it's a planting that I think seems to be adapted to just about anywhere in the country. Now, we did get into some concerns when we got into some sandy soil plantings, some crappy soil, clay, and things like that, to where the peas just weren't reaching full potential. They were kind of yellowing, and so that's why we came up with Fall Forage sandy soil. Now, that was designed a couple of years ago, and again, it was not only our own plantings, because we've got some plots here and some grounds up here that we work on that it's just terrible stuff to work with. I just didn't think the Fall Forage, all the plants in the Fall Forage were reaching their full potential. They just didn't look the best, and I knew it had everything to do with the soil conditions. So we pulled the peas and the winter wheat out of there. We added buckwheat, and we changed the rates of the rye and the oats, and we have now Fall Forage sandy soil. So you've got a great diversity if you've got crappy soil. We had 3 acres of this planted last year on sandy ground, clay ground. You've probably seen it in a couple of our videos. We're going to head up there and do some more videos this year. It worked outstanding. Okay, it's not the beautiful brassica plot, or the great looking clover plots that you see on the outdoor channel or things like that, but you know what, the deer up there hammered it. The plots were full of deer every night, and it worked great for that soil condition. We had diversity, we had food all the way through till Christmas, and then we had a lot of food come back in the spring. So Fall Forage sandy soil, for you folks that don't have the best soil but still want a diverse planting with the benefits of rye, the attractiveness of oats and young buckwheat, our Fall Forage sandy soil is a great choice. The other one we have is our Green Forage blend. Started working on this in 2018 for areas that were egg areas. One of the things we were finding is that sometimes the early planted rye, the deer in some of these egg areas are just spoiled. Okay, and they didn't really want to eat the rye. So we pulled the rye out, and then we bumped up the peas, and we actually added a soybean. We found a soybean that was not Roundup ready, that grew extremely quick and was very attractive. And then we have a small percentage of oats in it because, like I said, folks, young green oats, it's about as good as it gets for whitetail. They really like those. So the Green Forage blend, where do we recommend that? Again, it was designed for egg areas, okay? I mean, you think about it, if you're hunting in an egg area, you're competing with alfalfa. Now, when I'm talking about hunting in an egg area, we're talking about maybe early September, early October, before the frost hits, okay? Before those beans are yellowing on all the farmers' fields. You're competing with beans and alfalfa. Those are pretty big draws, okay? So that's why we got a high percentage of soybeans in there, but with that soybean, the frost will kill it. And with the forage peas, it can take, I believe it was down to 25 degrees, 24 degrees, as we were seeing before those forage peas were killed. So you're going to overseed this with rye. But now, if you're in a big woods area, you don't have a lot of food sources, this might not be what you want because it's got a high percentage of a broadleaf plant. Okay, the beans and the peas. Some of those don't regenerate. Again, you're going to hear me use that term a lot, especially with the cereal grains, why we like some plantings versus the other. A lot of this, if you've got no food in the area and they get on this mix quickly, it might not be the results you want when you climb into your deer stand for the first night. So this is a blend that if you've got a lot of deer and not a lot of food around, you might want to look at something else. Maybe our Fall Forage might be a better choice for you because we're looking for that regeneration. When they come in and eat, it's kind of like you're cutting your grass. You mow your lawn, the grass grows back. You mow your lawn, the grass grows back. A lot of the stuff from the Green Forage blend isn't going to come back. The beans might not come back. And if they really get on the peas, you might lose a lot of that too. So it doesn't seem to be eaten to the ground in the egg areas or low deer density, but that's where this Green Forage blend was designed to help the problems of attraction in egg areas. So, that's kind of why we've got so many diverse blends, because you can't just take one blend and say, this mega super power big buck mix is going to work from Canada to Florida, Maine over to Washington. There's so many variables: soil conditions, deer density, what's planted around you, how are you going to plant, how big is the food plot, so we try to have blends here that are going to work for everybody because we understand everybody's situation is not the same. So based on your soil conditions, your deer density, the size of your food plot, where you are in the whitetail world, one of these should work for you. Now, planting instructions, I understand the whole no-till thing. We were big into it a couple years ago, and then we just ran into a lot of problems, and we're still messing with it. We're working on a couple of blends just because we've been asked to, and I think there's a place for it, okay? But, a lot of the country, and we saw this all summer long, is in a massive drought. We're starting to get some rain here in Michigan. We had a little bit of rain last night. We had a pop-up shower. But the ground is still dry. I mean, that with the rain that we got last night, some places you can't even tell anymore. It's just sucked in so quickly. The ground's so dry. So what we recommend to folks right now, especially if you have a bare plot, okay, if you've got a little bit of thatch on the ground, that's one thing. But if you've got a bare plot, I really recommend burying that seed, whether it's with a bed spring or a drill, a light disking. Okay, I don't like the throw it out there and cultipack it in, because it might not be buried enough. And just in this environment we are right now, I really like to see the seed buried. Case in point, right outside the window here, we did some landscaping last fall, and it just didn't come in the best. And just no rain. And all summer long, this hill out here got baked and just cooked. And we had rye out there and we had grass seed. And for 6 weeks, there was nothing growing. It was just rock hard clay ground. Well, we've gotten, I think in the last 3 weeks, we've probably gotten 7 or 8 rains. Well, it's green as it can be. Okay. So yes, the no-till worked with rain. If you're getting rain and you've got good ground that holds moisture, sure, you can put the seed out there and it should take off. But again, the general rule of thumb is, as big as the seed is, that's how deep you want it buried. That's how deep you want it covered. And especially if you don't have thatch, if your buckwheat that you were counting on a buckwheat roll down failed and it's really thin, or the deer ate it, you've got bare ground. Folks, you're going to have to get that seed buried to have success. Okay, you might get 30% germ with a couple of rains. You might get 50%. You might get 60%. But I want you to get 100%. And the best way to do that is get the seed buried on an environment like we're in right now. Now, fertilizer. Now, this is kind of a tricky deal, especially without seeing a soil test. But if you think about these blends that we have, they've got both grasses, which is the rye and the oats, wheat, depending on which blend you buy. And then it's got broadleafs, some legumes. So we do a general fertilizer of 1919, around 100 pounds an acre, because we're trying to grow that food as fast as we can in a short time frame. We're getting less sunlight every day, and the deer are starting to eat it. You need to fertilize this. We want it to grow quickly. Now, there's a lot of liquid products, Brad Harper Growing Solutions, and Plot Doctor, that we're trying to where we can get away from the granular fertilizer. But again, not everybody has that option. So 100 pounds an acre, 1919, without seeing a soil test, good place to start. All right, how much of these blends do we plant per acre? Each one of these blends, we recommended 100 pounds an acre. This is going to be 4 bags of the fall forage. They come in 25-pound bags. 2 bags of the green forage blend. They come in 50-pound bags, or 4 bags of fall forage sandy soil. Now, that's the recommendation. I was usually going 75. We started out the fall forage at 75 pounds an acre. But me personally, when I plant a food plot, I want it to look like a lawn. I don't want to see any dirt, any soil. I don't want to see any bare spots, because again, we're trying to put as much food in a small space as possible. But the other thing is I don't want you to get carried away so where it just doesn't grow, because you think about it, each little section of ground, each piece of ground can only produce so many plants. So we seem to think that the fall forage at 100 pounds an acre, or these other two at 100 pounds an acre, is a great starting point. And if you get a spot that needs a little bit of help, it's got a bare spot, the deer eating it to the ground, you can come in and overseed rye. Now, planting early, what do I mean by that? Some people are afraid, well, if I plant this too early, the rye is going to get rank and tall and they're not going to eat it. And I don't really buy into that. Again, I mentioned Paul Knox before. He's the one that helped me develop the Fall Forage blend. And he was farming in Iowa, and he was putting his rye in mid-August. I mean, you think about the food around him in Iowa. He was surrounded. He was living in a giant food plot. And those deer were eating that rye as soon as it came out of the ground. So I'm not really worried about that. We did pull the rye out of here for folks that had that concern. But if you think about it, especially in these droughts, I would rather have my seed in the ground and growing than waiting for rain. Well, I don't want. I'm planting too early. I just in areas where there's not a lot of food, I just don't see that. I just see them on the even behind our house here. We get the rye put in mid-August. I'm not waiting to do the rye overseed. Our rye is in the ground in August, and they're eating it. I've never seen on our food plots where rye gets this tall. It doesn't happen here. Okay, it might happen in some ag areas again where they're surrounded by food, but by and large, if you've got big woods, you don't have a lot of food around you, you've got high deer density, I get my rye in early. To me personally, I would rather have my rye in the ground in mid to late August and not worry about any more rye overseeding or anything like that, walking into my food plots, praying for 3 rains to get that rye to go. I would rather have a 1.5 foot taller rye growing than no rye growing at all, because that's just food in the bank for you, for the deer. They're going to eat it. But I like planting my rye here in Michigan probably mid-August because they get on it right away. So don't be afraid of that. But if you are in an area where the deer seem to kind of have more than enough food, green food, beans, alfalfa, you might want to look at this and then try the rye overseed later and hope for a bunch of rain. Now, some of the extras we like to add to our cereal grain plantings or our grains and greens plantings. There's many reasons for this. Okay, one of them, red or crimson clover at about 10 pounds to the acre. You do get, especially with the red clover that we have, it's a very fast growing clover. And again, I like to plant mine in August to where they actually are eating on it by the end of September. But the biggest thing for us is I'm setting the table for next spring and summer with this red clover. And what I mean by that is that the rye is going to come back in the spring, and so is the red clover. Now, depending on where you are in the country, the crimson may or may not survive winter. We usually don't do a lot of crimson clover up here in fall plantings because it does not survive the cold winters. That's why I use red. But we use red for food in the fall as part of that buffet, as part of that diversity. But it comes back in the spring and then feeds the deer in the spring. It feeds the deer all summer. And then I use it as a green manure plow down for my brassica plantings. Okay, and even if you're not going to do brassica and you till that red clover up, a lot of organic nitrogen for your next planting. The other thing, and we talked about it before, is radishes. About 4 pounds to the acre of radishes, because the radishes add diversity. And again, I'm not really concerned about building soil in the fall. However, it does help with the soil. It loosens the soil up. We've all heard the stories of radishes, but they're a phenomenal early season attraction. September, if you folks are hunting in Wisconsin, I think Kentucky starts in September. Those states that have an early archery season, radishes are tough to beat. So we do add a little bit of radishes to these plantings. And then the rye. Do we need the rye overseed? Well, I think, like I said, if you plant this at 100 pounds an acre, you're going to have to make that decision. If you see bare spots, if it looks thin, if the deer are browsing on it, by all means, you can drop rye. But like I said before, you need multiple rains to get it going, especially if you don't have the greatest of soil conditions. Yes, rye will grow in the back of a pickup truck. I have a gravel driveway out here. I shoved a forklift through a bag of rye 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Well, anyway, the rye sat there. It'll grow in a gravel driveway once we get rain. Okay, so just keep that in mind. If you're doing a rye overseed, you need probably 2 rains for it to get going. Unless you've got beautiful dark soil that's high in organic matter and holds moisture really well. But anyway, that's the extras we add to these plantings. Red or crimson clover at 8 to 10 pounds an acre, radishes at 3 to 4 pounds an acre, and then cereal rye when you need it. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind, These are big seeds, okay? And we talked about getting them buried. So our planting method is this. We get the fertilizer down, we get the big seeds down, we get them covered, dragged in or dissed in, get them covered, cultipack, roll, whatever you want to use, lawn roller, spread the red or crimson clover, spread your radishes. You can actually mix them all together. Spread that and pack it again, you're done. We've done that for 10 years, it works outstanding, okay? These are real tiny seeds. And so these might be needed to be planted deeper, these not so much, and that's how we've done it for 10 years and it works outstanding. All right, one of the things when we're talking about grains, and I see this a lot, and I understand it, trust me, I get it. You don't want to buy from those evil seed companies, you know, they're ripping you off, or, you know, you can do better, go down to the local co-op. I get it, you know, trust me. But those evil seed companies like me have to test all our seed, multiple laboratories, okay? We do our own tests, okay? And when you go down to the local co-op and look for those bin run, you know, the deal on bin run seed, I want you to think about this. Okay, well, I'm going to give you 3 things that we've seen personally. We bought a lot of bin run early, just for our own plantings, you know, before we even started Northwoods. And one time we bought, I think it was 100 pounds of cereal rye. It was like 15 bucks. I go to open that bag of rye, and it looked like a bag of deer feed. What I mean by that is there was rye in there. There was just crap. You know, weed heads and corn. And so I didn't even plant it. I just threw it on the ground. Hopefully something came and ate it. We got the bottom of the combine. That's what we got. Another one, we bought some rye. Again, this is mostly bin run rye. Nothing germinated. You know, and I'll get those phone calls. I threw all your seed out, nothing germinated. Okay. Well, we planted rye in 3 different food plots, got multiple rains. In fact, the one where I'm standing had rye in it, and I put a sprinkler on it. So it got plenty of water. It just molded, died, nothing happened, nothing grew. That seed was never tested. There was no seed tag on it. So got to kind of be careful about that. Third, more bin run rye stories. We bought some bin run rye, and the following year, we had an infestation of pigweed in every single plot we put it in. Did it come from that rye? Maybe. Again, no seed tag on it. Was it cleaned? I don't know. Now, I'm not trying to knock farmers. I'm not knocking farmers at all. But I just want you folks to be aware of when you're trying to save $1 on these bin run products. Case in point, here's another one. I drive by a rye field every day going to one of the properties we're managing and working on. And as this rye field is maturing and turning brown and getting ready to be harvested, there's Canadian thistle everywhere. There's big pockets of Canadian thistle. So this is my question. What's the farmer going to do? What's this rye being used for? Is this rye seed going to be cleaned? Because obviously when he takes the rye, he's taking that Canadian thistle right with him. Something to think about, folks. Yeah, I understand you want to save some money. I get it. But our cereal rye is cleaned. It's certified. It doesn't have thistle in it. It doesn't have pigweed in it. And you shouldn't have these problems. We have it germ tested, okay? It's $25, $26 a bag, a 50-pound bag of rye, but there's a reason for it, you know? So just be careful about that, okay? If you can find a farmer that's got clean, certified rye, great. Great way to save money. But if you think you're getting a deal by running down to the local co-op and buying a 50-pound bag of bin run rye, be very careful, okay? Because I've seen it personally. Where that didn't work out the best. We're still trying to eradicate pigweed from that problem. So just something to think about, okay, when you're looking at bin run grains, because there's bin run wheat, there's bin run oats, there's bin run beans. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, if it's bin run Roundup Ready beans, I believe you could just spray your way out of the problem, hopefully. But just something to think about. You know, there's a saying, you get what you pay for. So just, if you've got a great source, and I'm sure there's some great sources out there where it's very clean, it's good quality seed. I'm sure there's great sources for bin run seed. But there's also, I've experienced it, some horror stories buying bin run seed. So you just got to be careful about that. Okay? All right, well, I hope that helps. You know, I'm excited here. We're probably 8 to 10 days away from dropping our first round of brassica seed in the ground. and it's going to be wide open after that. So I know a lot of you folks, you're buying a lot of seed right now. I can't thank you enough. We've got trucks coming in here every day. We've got trucks leaving here every day with pallets of seed going to customers. So exciting times, folks. Planting season's right around the corner. I hope this helps. If you've got questions, if you got questions, by all means, ask them in the comments below. We'll try to get those answered. Thanks for watching, folks. Thank you so much for the business, keeping us going. Thanks for helping the channel grow, and we'll see you in a few days.